for joining us for the Lisbon Town Council's organizational meeting that's held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in December. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flags. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This past election, 2,770 ballots were cast, resulting in the following candidates being elected into office. Town Council at Large, Lisa Ward, with 1,361 votes. Budget Advisory Board at Large, write-in candidate, Norma Wells with 5 votes. Budget Advisory Board District 1, write-in candidate John Eckhart with 2 votes. School Committee, Marcy Crosskill with 1,615 votes. And Water Commission, Kenneth Wells with 2,024 votes. I'd like to swear in Councilor Ward. Will you please come forward to be sworn in? Please raise your hand and repeat after me. I, Lisa Ward,
I, Lisa Ward,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
and will obey
and will obey
the laws
the laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Maine,
and of the state of Maine,
that I will,
and that I will,
in all respects,
in all respects,
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the Charter
of the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the Town of Lisbon,
of the Town of Lisbon,
and will faithfully
and will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office
of the
of
office
Town Council.
of Town Council.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
School Committee Member Marcy Crosskill, please come forward to be sworn in. You raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Marcy Crosskill,
I, Marcy Crosskill,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Maine,
and of the state of Maine,
that I will,
that I will,
in all respects,
in all respects,
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the Charter
of the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the Town of Lisbon,
of the Town of Lisbon,
and will faithfully
and will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office
of the
of
office
School Committee.
of School Committee.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Norma Wells would be sworn in at this time, but she was not able to leave work, so we'll have to swear her in later. And Water Commission member Kenneth Wells, please come forward to be sworn in. And please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kenneth Wells,
I, Kenneth Wells,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Maine,
and of the state of Maine,
that I will,
that I will,
in all respects,
in all respect,
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the Charter
of the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the Town of
of
Lisbon,
the Town of Lisbon,
and will faithfully
and will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of office
of office
of the Water Commission.
of the Water Commission.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The next item of business is the election of chairman for the year. Nominations are open.
I nominate Fern LaRochelle for chairman.
Do we hear any other nominations?
Nominate Mike Bowie.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, then we'll vote. Would you like to cast your vote by ballot or by raise of hand?
I believe secret ballot's how we've usually done it.
Yes? Yep. And there are ballots in front of you, if you'd like. We have 5 votes for Fern La Rochelle and 2 for Mike. So Fern La Rochelle has been elected as council chairman for the ensuing year. If you'd like, I can continue while you do the vice chairman, or would you like me to proceed?
Once you proceed, and we'll actually go to the vice chair.
Okay. The floor is now open for nominations for vice chairman.
I'd like to nominate Lori Pomelo.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, would you like to cast your ballot by a raise of hands? Sure. Ballot. All those in favor?
I'll abstain from
All
that.
those opposed?
Big vote
All right.
going on here.
We have 6 votes for Counselor Pomelo. Counselor Pomelo has been elected vice chairman for the year. At this time, I believe the gavel is turned over to you, Counselor La Rochelle. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for attending this part of our inauguration of elected officials. Our council meeting will resume after a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
Counselor Bowie?
Here.
Counselor Bickford?
Here.
Counselor Ward?
Here.
Counselor Pomelo?
Here.
Counselor Lunt?
Here.
Counselor Mason?
Here.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Here.
Next item.
Next item, please.
Public hearing, victualer's license for Nicholas Benoit, doing business as Benoit's Orchard.
I'd like to open that public hearing if anybody wants to come to the podium. Anybody on the public hearing?
You've already tried them,
Not
haven't
to
you?
brag, I was going to do it after you voted, but I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Nick Benoit. I own Benoit's Bakery and Wine Cellar, just opened up in Lisbon. So just wanted to say thank you. You guys have been great to work with so far, so we look forward to many years of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other interest in the public hearing, making a comment?
If you haven't been there, you need to go. The food's very good, and a great selection of wines.
Seeing no other, we'll close the public hearing. Twyla, next, please.
Next item is audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Please use the microphone at the podium, state your name and your address for the record, and limit comments to 5 minutes or less.
My name is Richard Nettle. I live in Lisbon Falls in Colonial Gardens on Bickford Drive. I have two things I wanted to bring up. One of them has to do, I don't see it on the agenda. I don't know if it is, but what's coming as far as the bus, or what are you doing to come up with some kind of an alternative for the people who use the bus to go to Royston and back, people who go to work, come back from work, or they want to go shopping? Is there anything being discussed or anything, or you found out anything where we can probably get more money?
I can answer that briefly. I've been pretty much every day bothering Steve to make sure he's been making the phone calls. He knows it. And he has made quite a few contacts, and we should be hopefully within maybe by the next meeting actually having another part of the agenda to go over it. Steve has been working pretty hard to try to get some funding. Some of the dates have moved around a little bit. I guess they've changed a little bit of when they thought if we don't get funding, when it will close, and I'll allow Steve maybe to add a little bit towards that.
I've talked to AvCog, Jennifer Williams, along with Congressman Michaud and Senator Collins' office, along with Governor LePage's office. We're looking for $75,000, which would carry us through the end of October 30th, which is the Western Maine Transportation fiscal year. I got a call back today from AvCog, and they may have some funding for us that will cover that. They have to get permission from the Maine Department of Transportation in order to utilize that funding. It was not necessarily designated for that, but I should hear hopefully by tomorrow or by the end of the week. So I'll keep my fingers crossed. If not, I have a meeting scheduled with Senator Collins' office as well as Congressman Michaud's office here on Tuesday to find, if we don't get that funding, to find another resource. So we're working on it pretty hard.
Thanks. The second thing is, I've brought this up once before. It'd be good if the town had a committee, and I'm willing to serve on it. We look around the streets and things like that in town, and as far as concerning pedestrians and bicyclists, because we don't usually do anything like that. We're more to the person who uses the automobile or a motorcycle, some other motorized transportation. And I know that Brunswick, about 5 or 6 weeks ago, they did have a grant. That's true. Some more of the stimulus money that's hurting us, but they went around and they looked at Brunswick, all the streets and stuff like that, for pedestrians and bicyclists up there. And it would be nice if we could, on a voluntary basis, maybe working with the police department, going through the things, because they know what the roads are. Myself, I know what it is to walk. I know what it is to ride a bike. I do a lot of that in town, and we need to look at that, especially before we fix any roads, so that we can have some input. There can be some input so they can be planned better. Perhaps maybe, I know that one incident involving me, I was coming up here, you have one of those turning lanes, and they went right across the white line, inside the white line. I know they can do that, but why not right around that curve over there? There's only like 27 inches, as I've measured it. Make that yellow, so they can't go through there. They can, on the outside. And that would be one idea that I would have. Maybe, I don't know, somebody might not think it's such a good idea, but it's one idea I have, and make this more of a bicycle, pedestrian, friendly community. Most people forget what it is to walk or to ride a bike in town. I mean, you got kids that use bikes. Maybe more of them would use it. You take 75% population in the United States, if there was ever a war, would be unfit for military service because they're overweight. And I think a committee would be good. I mean, I ride, I walk, but that's choice. It's not because of anything else. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Any other interest in audience participation?
Good evening. My name is Ross Cunningham. I live on 126 Main Street. Chair of the Lisbon Promotions Committee. I just want to take a minute to thank the town and the town manager for the support we got this past weekend for the Very Merry Main Street. As you know, we sort of do these events every year based on volunteers only. This year, the town certainly embraced this event, certainly jumped out and put the tree up. That was phenomenal. But more than that, you seem to have embraced a culture of volunteerism among yourselves. I know that you paid for the wagon from your company. That's phenomenal. Thank you. And I know that Councilwoman Mason stood out in the cold for 2 hours and took these wonderful flyers from people as they came downtown. But more importantly, there were several members of the town staff who spent excessive hours after hours working on this. So I wanted to thank you for that, and thank you for the opportunity to keep it going. Thanks.
Thank you, Ross. And just to add to that, I mean, if anybody went down, it was a really well attended event. I've never seen so many kids running around for the tree lighting, and I do want to thank the town employees, because there was a lot of town employees that took a lot of time and were a little bit stressed, I think, at times, to getting that done. And Ross, I mean, you left yourself out. I mean, you definitely go over and beyond to help that all get put together. And as plans move on, I guess there's bigger and better plans for next year. So again, as everybody steps up and volunteers, it only can get better, right? Thank you, Ross. Anybody else for audience participation? Seeing nobody, Twyla for next.
Okay. At this time, with the council's permission, you wanted to move other business under audit presentation to this point in time? So
Yes.
audit presentation?
Is that all acceptable?
Yep. Kathy?
Kathy?
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I'm Kathy Tyson. I'm with the firm of Runyon, Kirstein, Willett. We perform the audit for both the town as a whole and the school department as a department of the town of Lisbon. The audit for this year was for the year ended June 30, 2011. And in your packets for the council, as well as the audit committee and I believe the school committee, you have drafts of all the reports that we are going to issue for this year's audit, which include financial statements for the town, the school department, the A133 federal compliance report, a letter of communication, and I think that's about it. They are marked draft, but I want to point out that we don't expect any changes whatsoever to those, other than maybe a little formatting here or there. They're ready to go final, and they will be printed in booklets and available to you probably by next week. The reason that they're in a draft form really is because of the fact that you do have an audit committee. We do try to respect that group and give them a chance at it, and we did have a brief meeting with them prior to this meeting. It was brief, and there is some discussion on how that committee will interact in the future with the auditors and what their role and responsibilities will be. And I guess that it's my understanding that there will be a meeting scheduled in January to discuss that. So, having said that, I would like to point out a few things about the audit results to you. The opinion in the town's financial statements, which is our opinion on your report, is basically a clean opinion with the exception that the water department is not included in the town's financial statements. And in our firm's opinion, the water department is not a separate legal entity, although they do have a separate audit and a separate set of financial statements for their fiscal year, which is a calendar year ended December 31st each year. So we make a note of that in the town's audit opinion, not because we're recommending you change or do it one way or the other, but because we think the readers of the financial statements need to know that the water department is not included. In addition to the financial statement opinions, the letter that's included in your packets in draft form discloses things that you wouldn't otherwise know about from reading the audit opinion, such as if we had difficulties in performing the audit, which we did not. We had no problems this year. Management and your finance staff, both at the town and the school, were very well prepared for us, and we were able to get all the information that we needed. Very good results. As a matter of fact, attached to that letter, we're required to communicate any adjustments that we need to make as part of the audit process. We come in, we look at your accounting records, we determine if there's any errors or omissions, and propose audit adjustments. And typically we have quite a number of adjustments in years past. This year there were 3 journal entries for the school department, and I got to say, you know, 2 of those were very, very small. I think $11 and $45 or something along that line. So really 1 journal entry for the school department. When you think about the number and the volume of transactions that flow through that department, it's really phenomenal audit results to end up with only 1 journal entry. And for the town as a whole, there were only 6 journal entries that we proposed to the town to be made to correct omissions or anything that needed to be adjusted. So excellent results there, much, much better than we've ever seen in the past in any of our audits here in Lisbon. We do, in addition to auditing the financial statements, the actual numbers and disclosures, we have to look at your federal programs, and you do get quite a significant amount of federal money. What we have to do is look at every major federal program that you receive and audit each of those every 3rd year, and more often if there's risks involved with those programs, such as they have a lot of findings in previous audits. We audited 3 major programs this year at the school department. The federal stabilization money, which was significant this year, the Title I-A program, and the local entitlement program, which is a special education program. The only finding that we had in those 3 programs, and when I say we audited these federal programs, it's going above and beyond just looking at the financial information. We have to look at a large number of federal requirements that are associated with these programs. We had 1 finding with respect to the Title I-A program. It had excess cash on hand, which basically means you didn't spend the money fast enough. The feds like you to have only on hand what you need for current needs and draw the money down after or as you spend it. The state has had this problem historically, and Lisbon has had this finding, as well as other school departments across the state, to such a degree that the states changed the procedures that they are requiring now for the drawdowns of these federal funds. And in 2011 and years past, you would project to the state how you were going to spend the funds and draw them down in using those projections. And in the future, starting this current fiscal year, you will draw the funds down after you spend them. So this won't be an issue for you going forward. Basically, we had no material weaknesses in your internal control systems that were reported, and no significant deficiencies in those controls that were necessary to report. We actually did not even issue a management letter this year, which is a forum for us to communicate to management any weaknesses we find in your internal control systems. So I think this is the first time in the history of my audits with the town of Lisbon and the Lisbon School Department that I haven't issued a management letter. So something to be very proud of. In addition to that, you took a great giant leap forward this year in that Jessica Malloy, your finance director, took the financial statements and prepared them in-house. And historically, you have provided all your financial records to the auditors, but the auditors, the firm, our firm, has actually put together those financial statements for you. And our profession really prefers that the government prepare their own financial statements so the auditors can be auditing someone else's work. And this is the first year that you've accomplished that, and Jessica did a wonderful job preparing the financial statements, and we look forward to her doing that in the future as well. Okay, having said that, there were school department financial statements and town financial statements. I'm not going to go through any of the numbers in any great detail, but I generally speak briefly about fund balance. And I do want to touch on the fact that you will find that the fund balance language has changed a great deal from prior years. We have historically discussed with you what undesignated fund balance levels were and designated fund balance levels. And those terms are no longer used with the implementation of GASB 54, which was required for Lisbon this year. You have to look at fund balance and break it down into 5 categories. Non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. So in addition to confusing us all, hopefully it is going to allow for communities to have better comparisons about what their balances of fund balance represent and what amounts in those balances are truly restricted versus amounts that are unassigned and available for the community to use in the budget process, for example. Just a moment on what each of those categories represent. Non-spendable would be something that simply is that, non-spendable. Inventory, for example, that you have on hand. Loans receivable that are owed to the town but aren't going to be paid for a long period of time. Those types of things. Restricted fund balance is amounts of your balances that you have at the end of the year that are restricted by an outside third party. So it's going to be restrictions placed on you because of a grant agreement, bond issue requirements, state law, for example, those types of things. But it wouldn't be something the council internally committed itself to. It would be an external third-party restriction. The next step down from the third-party restriction would be committed fund balances, and that's where this governing board actually takes a vote and commits part of those balances to be spent for a specific purpose, and it stays committed until you take another vote to uncommit those balances. Assigned is similar to that, only an assigned is a little less stringent, and the council can give the authority to management to assign, for example. And an assignment might be something like your budgeted use of fund balance in a subsequent year, where if you don't use it, it automatically will lapse to fund balance, rather than you having to take a specific vote. So committed and assigned can be relatively close and hard to distinguish. And then everything else goes into the unassigned category, It's sort of what we used to think about as undesignated, and it's certainly what you want to look to when you're thinking about what you have for funds available to you for future years, budgets, for example. Just one note on this, because of the restricted fund balance being driven by state law, we have reclassified the school. Department of Education has said any funds raised for school have to be spent for school. So in the town's financial statements, any fund balances that are a result of surpluses for the school department, they used to be undesignated for school purposes. Now they're restricted for school purposes. Just semantics a little bit, but it will affect the way you think about future fund balance policies, for example. So you'll note that in looking at your fund balances. Speaking of the school fund balance, at the end of June, the school had a fund balance of $530,000. They had already assigned a portion of that, or committed a portion of that, to their 2012 budget, about almost half of it, $245,000, leaving an unassigned balance of $285 in the eyes of the school. It's unassigned in the eyes of the town. It's actually restricted for education, but certainly available to you. On the town side, the fund balance at the beginning of the fiscal year we were auditing, July 1st, 2010, the fund balance was $3,200,000 in round numbers. And you had planned to use about half of that, a little less than half, $1,500,000 in this current budget year. Some of it in the budget process, I don't remember the exact numbers, but a large number, a large percentage of that $1,500,000 was carry forward balances, projects that you had from 2009 and 2010 that were incomplete, that you carried and planned to do in 2011. So you had planned to use about half of the $3 million. You really only used, or your fund balance only went down $166,000. So at the end of the fiscal year, your total fund balance was still over at $3 million, just shy of $3 million. I think it was $3,060,000, and you had planned to use $250,000 in the current budget that we're in now, and $776,000 of that balance was carry forward money. So when you take the $3 million and you slice off about $1 million that was used this year or for carry forward projects, you're down to about $2 million. And keep in mind that $500,000 of that $2 million is school restricted money. So that leaves the town with about $1.5 million. And out of that $1.5 million, about $300,000 is non-spendable, your inventory and that type of thing. So it brings you down to an unassigned of about $1.2 million. So long story to get to the end result, but you're looking at about $1.2 million of unassigned town fund balance after the June 30, 2011 audit. Any questions on that? No, please stop talking about it. One other note, the debt, outstanding debt of the town, $13.5 million. There was a little bit of new debt in 2011, not too much. The schools issued a $350,000 bond. It's a qualified QZAB bond is the what we call these types of bonds, but they have favorable interest rates that are federally subsidized. So $350,000, a small amount of debt, and $230,000 of additional debt on the town side that was a reclassification of 2010 debt between the water department and the town. So you ended the year at $13.5 million. And just a note on that, that does not include the water department debt. As we noted earlier, they're not included in these financial statements. And the water department debt is $3,400,000. So if you were to take that into account and look at the town as a whole with the water department, it'd be about $17 million. Any questions on that? Just to conclude, I want to thank Kathy Mesmer. Very good job, very excellent audit results at the school department. And Jessica Malloy, you know, one thing that I noticed this year is there's very good relationships between the school and the town in them wanting to work together for a common goal to get the audit done and have a good audit result. So I want to thank them for their hard work. And certainly if any questions come up, you know where to find us. We work for the council, we work for the school committee, we don't work for management. So if there's anything that comes up during the year, please keep us in mind.
All set?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I'd just like to respond also that we thank you, the finance people, very much. It's nice to have a really good audit, and I know 4 or 5 years ago when it was starting to look at some of the audits with the audit committee, there was a number of concerns, not big concerns, but I think over a period of time we've actually improved them every year, which is really good. So thank you very much. It's good that we're actually in good hands. Twyla, next.
Next item, under consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have an item removed may do so now. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered as the next item of business. Seeing none, Order 2011-213 to approve a victuals license for Benoit's Orchard, minutes of November 1, 15, and 22.
Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? All those against? And abstain?
Okay, as 6-0-1.
Next item?
Under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances. Order 2011-214, zoning maps, first reading, roll call vote required.
This is part of the land use ordinance updates that we have been doing. The planning board's been working on to bring it into compliance with the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2007. The reason you don't have the second reading is we thought we would bring both second readings to your next meeting, which will be the 20th, but the planning board vice chair is here tonight if you'd like to address the council and just let them know what the changes are in the land use map.
Mike?
Yeah, so I just have a question. I mean, all we got in our packet was this pretty picture.
Yeah.
So is there any words that go along with this ordinance that we need to be looking at?
You had those at your last meeting? The adjustments in the land use ordinance, that goes with this. They just didn't have the map ready.
Is that chart that we all had?
Yeah,
It was a chart.
Okay, I guess I'm confused why we have another first reading for zoning maps.
Because we didn't have the map.
It's not a-
They weren't prepared to show the maps at that time, and they wanted to explain the maps.
So the maps were supposed to be part of that.
Yes.
So we had an incomplete first reading the first time.
I wouldn't call it incomplete, but the planning
Well,
board
what
did not
makes up the
prepare
ordinance? My question is what makes up the ordinance,
everything.
right? So, I mean, I understand what we're doing. I just want to make sure. I expected to see more documentation with this to justify that, but knowing it's what we did at the last meeting, I don't have my last meeting stuff with me, but
The planning board vice chair will walk you through it.
Okay. I told Mike tonight, that I was not prepared to discuss this very much. This particular map is the result of all the changes in the zoning ordinances that you saw last meeting. The changes to the map itself, from what I have ever seen, are minor in that in compliance with the changes that we did to the, or attempting to do to the comprehensive plan, the removal of the commercial zone at the corners of Route 9 and Upland Road, as well as up at Sabatis Town Line. Those two very small commercial areas have been removed, and they have been addressed both in the ordinance and the changes to the comprehensive plan. There was some talk, and numerous hearings, there was some talk of changing some zoning down here. down where the Rumbo Mill is or was. However, any development in that area that we think that the town would be interested in will be allowed as a conditional use of the changes of the ordinances as now written. Not the old ordinance, but the one that you looked at last week. As I understand, it's the intention of code enforcement, the planning board, and the town to, at the 20th meeting, to have representatives from AvCog as well here, so that any in-depth questions that some of us are not prepared to answer, they can do for us. They've been a big help and a guide all the way through it, and quite frankly, everybody's been in it longer than any of us on the planning board, and some of the town council members. So that's what I can tell you at this moment.
Thank you, Don. Is there any other questions for the planning board before he steps down?
We could just put this off until the 20th and have the first reading.
At one time?
Yep.
How does the council feel? Does it feel better off to put this off and actually have the documentation and maps at one time to vote on a first reading?
Did we do a first reading on the other one? Right?
We did.
We can go back and do a first reading and hold a public meeting in your first meeting in January.
It's really up to the council. I mean, if everybody feels comfortable to vote on the map part of the first reading, and then we could move forward from there, I mean, that would be fine. I mean, listening to what the
Yeah,
planning
I'm
board
okay
had.
with that, understanding what it is now. I just didn't know what it is until today, so.
Do I have a motion from the council to move forward?
So move.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Roll call.
Sorry, roll call.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Bowie?
Yay?
Counselor Ward? Yes. Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Mason?
Yes.
Counselor Pomelo?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays, order passed.
Next item, Dwayne?
Order 2011-215, 2010 mobile home foreclosure waiver.
You have in your packets a list of foreclosures on mobile homes. This is an annual thing we do. We waive the foreclosure and allow the deputy tax collector to work with each party and attempt to collect the funding.
Make a motion, we accept.
I'll second that.
Any discussion from council?
I mean, this is pretty typical. These are pieces of property we really don't want.
We really don't want it.
Keep going after and see if we can get, evidently none of them have mortgages on them, so.
Otherwise, we'd be paid.
Right.
Seeing there's a first and a second, we will take a vote. All those in favor of passing? All those against? I guess it's,
All the, order passed, 7-0.
next item, Dwayne?
Under other business, B, ethics panel, summary of findings and recommendations.
Mr. Bowie is here.
Yes, yeah. Mr. Bowie, would you like to come to the podium and brief us on the result?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm David Bowie. I'm chairman of the ethics panel. Also with me tonight are my panel colleagues, Ross Cunningham and Michelle Swartzworth-Trammell. I want to make my usual disclaimer. Councilor Bowie and I have the same last name. We are related. His grandfather is my fifth cousin, and I always like to put that out there. We met on November 28th last week to review a referral about a possible conflict of interest involving Councilor Bowie. There was a citizen petition circulated by Mr. Fillmore. It read, request the ethic panel investigate the possibility Councilor Bowie has been participating in discussions pertaining to the consolidation of the 3 communications center in Androscoggin without revealing his wife's involvement in the Lisbon Communications Center. This, I believe, is conflict of interest and malfeasance of office. That was the wording of the petition. Mr. Fillmore submitted 4 pieces of evidence, a report of our own panel, the ethics panel from 2009, and the quote from that was, "The fact that a council spouse is an employee of the town does present a conflict of interest regarding the spouse's salary. Council Bowie has abstained in the past when the salary line was voted on. The panel's recommendation supports this action as appropriate." The second item was from Mr. Fillmore also. The second one, Council Bowie voted on a question of holding a hearing on his recall election. That was last year, December 7th, and Council Bowie abstained on the vote to set the special recall election date. Although we received that, we deemed that it was not germane to the question before us that was presented to us by the petition. Third item, the minutes from the Town Council workshop, September 27th, 2011. Discussion involving proposals for consolidation of county communication centers, in which Councilor Bowie said we should stick with the smaller communities, not be in favor of doing this. We will still have administration out front to handle the walk-ins and dispatch public works. If this was done on a weighted basis, the smaller communities might be willing to accept this, so they don't think they are paying for everything that Lewiston and Auburn need. Councilor Bowie said for this, referring to consolidation with Lewiston and Auburn 911 to happen, it would take a legislative change. Police are free, but fire and EMS are being billed directly to the municipality and is not included in the county taxes. Third, quote, Councilor Bowie pointed out that this option, referring to dispatching costs for the town of Poland, would cost Poland $153,075. The fourth item of evidence was a job description of the administrative assistant to the chief of police. Examples of work: perform dispatching service for departments, police, fire, and EMS when needed. Oral board exam team member in hiring process of new dispatch personnel, field training officer for dispatch personnel in communications operation, computer system, terminal operation, and other functions as necessary. Ensures the Lisbon Police Department dispatchers are familiar with the need for quality control, accuracy, completeness, and timeliness of all teletype entries, message security, and compliance with logging requirements. And fifth on that list was schedule users for terminal operator certification, recertification. Next item of evidence was information provided by Councilor Bowie. Councilor Bowie was appointed to the Lisbon to represent Lisbon during earlier discussions involving consolidation of county communications centers. He has reported back to the council on those discussions. Councilor Bowie serves as Lisbon's representative to the County Budget Committee. Councilor Bowie did not formally declare his wife's involvement with the Lisbon Communications Center, but believes the majority of those at county meetings are aware of her involvement since she worked as a county dispatcher before coming to work in Lisbon. Councilor Bowie's comments at county meetings and at Lisbon Council meetings have related to the comparative costs to Lisbon and other county towns under the various proposals being considered. Information gathered from Police Chief David Brooks. Consolidation of county communication centers has been under discussion for approximately 10 years and has involved 3 different study groups. No recommendations have yet been accepted or implemented by the county. The current committee is chaired by Chief Brooks and recommends a consolidation of dispatching for county towns in Lisbon separate from the, for county towns in Lisbon that are located in the center in Lisbon, separate from the Lewiston Auburn Center. This recommendation is supported by the town managers and administrators. Mrs. Bowie covers regular calls at the communications center if the dispatcher is tied up with duties because of an ongoing emergency, such as an accident. Mrs. Bowie is not paid any extra stipend for this type of coverage and does not receive overtime pay for such. The time she spends on oral boards for dispatcher candidates is within her regular workday and no additional stipend is paid. I do want to clarify that statement because she actually could qualify for overtime pay if an accident happened at, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and she were recovering beyond her normal workday, she would qualify as any town employee for overtime. If there is a consolidation of centers, there is no change anticipated in Mrs. Bowie's workload or compensation. If Lisbon's dispatching is moved out of Lisbon, Mrs. Bowie would no longer be a member of oral boards. The budget for dispatching has been formally separated from regular police services in order to track actual costs. This was done to clarify discussions of consolidation. There have been no discussions yet of how a consolidated system located in Lisbon would be administered on a day-to-day basis. The current study committee would like to see a decision reached by January 2013. Any changes in job descriptions would be made administratively. Any changes of compensation would have to be set by council action. The presentation given by Chief Brooks to the county meeting was the same as the one presented to the Lisbon Town Council on November the 1st. Councilor Bowie was present and spoke at both meetings. After reviewing that evidence, I think each of us separately, because we cannot meet except in a public meeting, we also looked to the charter language and other resources we've had from investigations involving prior cases that we've had referrals for. The findings of the Ethics Panel. Councilor Bowie's participation in discussions about the possible consolidation of communication centers within Androscoggin does not constitute a conflict of interest. If a plan for consolidation is accepted at some future date, and if there are subsequent discussions that impact Mrs. Bowie's compensation or benefits, then a conflict of interest would exist and Councilor Bowie would be required to abstain from discussion and voting. We included our reasoning here for the record. Concerning Councilor Bowie's participation in discussions of communication center consolidation, although Mrs. Bowie's job, administrative assistant to Chief of Police, does involve some duties in connection with Lisbon Communication Center, those duties are part of her regular workday. In particular, she covers for dispatching only when regular dispatchers are tied up with an emergency dispatching event. She receives no extra compensation for this work. Again, she could, if a situation arose, fall into an overtime situation. Mrs. Bowie's compensation is not determined by the number of dispatches or the number of calls handled by the communications center. The current discussion about a consolidation of some or all county communication centers is at an exploratory and conceptual level. If any conceptual plan is approved, a plan of administration must be developed. Additionally, if any compensation levels within the Lisbon Police Department are recommended for adjustment up or down as a result of a consolidation, such adjustments require action by the Town Council. The current discussion of consolidation is similar in nature to the existing policy governing Councilor Bowie's participation in discussion of the police budget. He is allowed to participate in discussion and vote in sections of the police budget other than those that determine Mrs. Bowie's compensation. He may also vote on the total police budget once the salary budget lines have been set. A decision on consolidation does not set compensation levels for any personnel. Concerning allegations of concealment, Councilor Bowie has for several years abstained from voting on the police department salaries budget because of Mrs. Bowie's involvement in that department. Members of the council for whom any concealment would be critical are aware of the relationship. Many of the discussion participants at the county level are also aware of the relationship since Councilor Bowie has served on the county budget committee and Mrs. Bowie worked as a county dispatcher before coming to work at Lisbon PD. Lisbon is a small community in which a high percentage of citizens know a high percentage of their fellow townspeople. We do have recommendations which we think will be of benefit. Since there is no finding of a conflict of interest, no formal action by the town is required, by the town council is required. We do offer the following recommendations to improve clarity and transparency in the conduct of town business. Citizens attending a town council meeting and citizens watching televised videos of meetings may not be aware that Councilor Bowie's wife is a town employee. Even those who are aware may not know of her work responsibilities related to the communications center. Since this has been a controversial issue, we recommend that Councilor Bowie or the council chairman make a general statement of this relationship prior to future public discussions involving the communications center. We believe that this additional transparency would serve all parties well. And second, when any councilor has a conflict of interest, that councilor should not participate in the discussion or the vote on the matter in question. During the discussion and vote, the councilor should leave his or her council seat and sit in the audience where he or she may speak as a member of the audience. This is the standard policy for abstention and is especially important so that citizens viewing televised meeting at a later date are fully aware that the councilor is abstaining. And that concludes our report to the council.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions? Has any questions?
I guess the only question that I have about this is in basically the last paragraph pertaining to the abstention where if the counselor was to remove themselves from the seat but then could go and speak as a member of the audience, it still seems pretty gray to me about how there could still be a perception of a conflict of interest. If you speak as a member of the community but you are a counselor, there still is the appearance that there would be a conflict of interest, and I think that that could still be problematic for people.
It probably still could be. However, any citizen of the community has the right to come in and speak in the audience. And that's why it is essential that the counselor remove himself from his position, and you're absolutely right. And there's also nothing to prevent the counselor from handing notes to people 2 days before the meeting. We all rely on faith and people's ethical judgment in any situation like that. But that's the standard procedure that would normally be followed for an abstention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowie. I think it's really important, and again, as we hate seeing this committee actually needing to work at all, we do appreciate when they do come together and actually give us recommendations. I'm glad with the outcome because I feel that Mike is a great benefit to us looking at these items with the knowledge he has from the county. Unfortunately, I don't know of any of us on the council that actually has the background and knowledge and the history with the county that Mike has, and can happily make us probably a lot more educated with the decisions we're going to make as time goes forward. One of the things I have seen over the past couple of years is the idea that the council works to police itself. So I'm sure as these things come up and this discussion goes forward, we can actually work to make sure everybody is known of what's going on. And before we do make any votes or any big decisions, I'm sure have trust in the council that we'll be policing ourselves and making sure that we follow the recommendations of the ethics panel. So again, thank you very much for giving us the recommendation. Twyla?
Next item is C, Town Manager's Report.
Just a few things. The dispatch discussions with the Androscoggin County are still ongoing. We met with 5 town managers, the sheriff's and Chief Brooks, and 1 representative, a selectman from Leeds, was present. Chief Brooks prepared a very detailed budget for everybody to review. The committee will be meeting again on Monday, taking some of the recommendations that some people made and fine-tuning it, and we'll be looking at cost distribution, and we're hoping to go before the budget committee and all the managers from each community that are involved in this to speak to the budget committee and to the commissioners on our recommendations on how we should proceed. But it's been a real good process, and I'm sure it will continue. As part of that, we submitted a Homeland Security grant, Chief Brooks did, that would help fund that. We have letters of recommendations from each of the towns that are participating that are in support of this, including the town of Lewiston. They liked some of the things that Chief Brooks and some of the other people have made recommendations on, and they're hopeful that we can move forward and do something with that. I'd like to thank the Public Works Department, along with all the staff from this office, volunteers, and especially Ross Cunningham, for the great job on Very Merry Main Street. I know the vendors down there were very excited. They saw Public Works out cleaning things up, getting things ready. It looked really excellent. The pavilion was excellent, and I'd just like to thank them from my office. The 3 Village Street, everybody I'm sure has noticed that building has been demolished. That went very smooth and quickly, and the interest that we've had in that property and other areas is still moving forward. We have upcoming meetings. You have a workshop scheduled for next Tuesday on our regular meeting, December 20th. It'll be hopefully a short council meeting, and we're going to do a workshop. Our attorney will be here, and we'll have our first council orientation session to go over tort claims and legal stuff, and along with procedural things, and bring everybody up to date on where we are in certain things that we've been working on. And I figured the 27th, right after Christmas, we might take the day off and not meet on that day. And then we'll start back up January 3rd with a regular council meeting. And then check your calendars to see if Saturday, January 7th would work for all of you, so we can do a council tour of all the departments. And you'll see department heads, and they'll walk you through their needs for the upcoming budget process, if there are any. That's all I have.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve at all? Or Twyla, next.
Under Appointments, Order 2011-216, 911 Addressing Officer.
After our last assessor left, we have to appoint an addressing officer. It usually is the assessor. In this case, will be the deputy assessor, Kathy Malloy. She's been with us a long time. This is something that's required by state, so if somebody comes in and needs an address, a split of property or something like that, they have to go through her. So I ask you just to appoint her as your new addressing officer.
Make a motion to appoint Kathy Malloy.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
Order passed, 7-0.
Next item, Twyla?
Is Counselor Communications.
Does anybody have anything to offer this evening?
I have a list.
A list?
Some of it is redundant, but I wanted to thank people from the town office and the community who helped to plan and prepare for and participate in the Thanksgiving dinner that was served at the Lisbon Falls Baptist Church. Welcome to Lisa onto the council. Very Merry Main Street, thank you very much, Ross, and all the other people that participated in that. I didn't get to attend all of it last year, although this year it was very noticeable that there was a lot of people that were in attendance. It was well attended. It had a nice touch with the caroling at the pavilion, Santa arriving on the horses. I think it's much safer for the children of the community to do it behind the MTM Center. Going up and down Main Street, a ton of people. I think it was very well received. I've heard a lot of positive comments, so I'm very, very pleased about that and glad that I was able to participate in all of it this year. So it shows the investment of the time and the effort that you're putting into it is very well worthwhile, and I thank you for that. Special congratulations to both Jessica, I think she's already left for the evening, and Kathy Mesmer from the school department on some outstanding results from the audit report. I mean, a lot of work has gone into that, and so we certainly do appreciate that. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you. Anybody else? All good?
So,
I'll add, thank you very much for the privilege of becoming chair. I want to thank Mark for the last year. It's been quite a venture for him. I'm sure that he'll enjoy the idea of sitting on the side and actually participating in the way he does. And welcome aboard, Lisa. I'm sure it should be fun. And again, I just want to put out there that it was great to see the community out for the Very Merry Main Street. I mean, it's with the concerts on the parks and the Moxie Days and the list just continues to grow. You mean, and I think as time goes on, it may actually just keep rolling into something bigger and bigger. And I think they're always looking for people to volunteer. And we've had some really good meetings lately with some of our committees and some of the planning groups, and everybody seems really interested in doing more. So I mean, that's hopefully we're on a forward movement here. And as a council this year, can kind of, instead of looking behind us, keep moving forward and try to do good things. And hopefully that we can make that happen. Next, Twyla.
Is executive session, Order 2011-217, to go into executive session per 1 MRSA, Section 405-6D, labor negotiations.
so moved.
Second that?
All those in favor? And is there going to be any vote? There will be no vote when we come out, so there's no
Order
reason to
passed,
stay.
7-0.
Are we going into the room? or are we-